I'm Noah Bendix-Balgley, and today we're going to talk about auditions. This is a big subject and something everybody's always asking about. How do I increase my chances for success at orchestral auditions? I wish I could say, hey, I'm Noah and I have the perfect solution. You're going to have the best audition of your life next time and we'll win the job. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. There are really parts of this process that are quite arbitrary, and you do need a bit of luck sometimes. There are things that are really out of our control. But today I want to talk about the parts of the process that you can have an influence on, so that you feel like you have more power in this process, about your preparation, about your mindset once you get there, all of these things, so that when you do get out there playing your audition, you feel like you've really presented your best self, your best playing, and you have the best chance to succeed in that moment. One thing people sometimes ask about in the audition preparation process is whether they should try to play for people who are members of that orchestra. It's a good question. I think one should try to get feedback from many sources. And I know when I took auditions, I started taking Concertmaster auditions without having that much orchestral experience. And I definitely searched as much as I could to get feedback from other concertmasters, to get ideas about how to play these concertmaster solo excerpts. And that was very helpful. To get from many different sides, sometimes completely conflicting and different information. But for me, it was really important to get some knowledge from people who knew the position and knew those works, because I was coming from a place as a student where I'd spent more time on solo repertoire and chamber music repertoire, and then when I decided to take concertmaster auditions, I had to kind of catch up to that part of things. So I really searched for people who I respected and to get some outside opinions about my playing and also my playing in that repertoire. Whether to play for people in the orchestra that you're applying for is sometimes a little bit trickier. Of course, I recommend trying to get feedback about that style. That every different orchestras have different traditions, different styles in terms of sound, what they're looking for in classical style or romantic styles of playing, whether it's more extroverted, more individual, or more mixing together into a group. It's okay to ask for people to listen to you from the orchestra, but it's a little bit a fine line, because you don't want to give the impression that you're trying to kind of get an unfair advantage, so there's some people who like to hear candidates before an audition, who are applying for their orchestra, and there are other people who really do not want to hear any candidates, and I think that's something to be respected, and it's something to keep in mind from the other side as well. But that being said, it's useful to know about the ensemble that you're applying for. To maybe listen to some recordings, if you can hear them live in concert. If you have a personal connection that maybe you have a chance to be able to go as a substitute with that orchestra, or even better, especially in Europe, if the orchestra has an academy that you can apply for, that's probably the best way to get an idea of what the orchestra is about and what their traditions are. This goes back a little bit to the question of knowing what you're applying for. And sometimes a shot in the dark can work. Sometimes if you're a student studying in Los Angeles, and you want to try for the Berlin Philharmonic, and you send in a resume and you get invited, it's possible it's going to work out. But usually you have a better chance if you have some sort of connection to the musical environment. And I feel, for example, for me, that when I auditioned for Berlin Philharmonic, it was definitely an advantage that I had studied for a number of years in Germany. I think I had a much better chance with that in mind than if I had not studied in Germany and even with a good position in America, and vice versa. These things they sometimes develop in our playing and our sense of approach to the music without us even knowing about it so much. And it's hard to say, oh yes, there's an exact German style or Viennese style or a style in New York. I'm very careful about making judgments about that, and saying, what works in New York won't work in Berlin and vice versa. But a knowledge of the orchestra's sound and approach is helpful. And that's why I say also to look for clues about it, with what the orchestra is asking for. Okay, so here's an example. With the Berlin Philharmonic auditions, we hear very few orchestral excerpts. Most of the audition is solo repertoire. So if you're a detective as an applicant, what does that tell you? That tells you, I think, that with the Berlin Philharmonic, there's a priority about individual artistic expression and creativity in these solo pieces that can be applied then to your profile as an artist. And when we hire, we're hiring somebody whose whole profile as a soloist, but as a musician, is appealing and will hopefully fit in our ensemble. Other ensembles that ask for many, many excerpts are maybe asking for sort of already a knowledge of the orchestral repertoire and an ability to hit different stylistic points in a number of different audition excerpts as well. And so you can see that from the list a little bit, that's an expression of that orchestra's values. So that's something to keep in mind and gives you a clue maybe of what they're looking for. And in the end, this is a very important point, and I think something that people from the auditioning side don't think about very often, is that if it works out, if you win the audition, this is really from something that has to work from both sides. I think people who are auditioning often think, oh, I hope that my playing will fit into what they're doing, and I want to make it fit into the style of this orchestra. Maybe you play in a perfect audition. You're by far the best player there, and it's not the right fit. You don't have the same sound approach or musical sensibility as that ensemble. And then if you don't get the position, maybe that's not a bad thing, because in the end, you need to be satisfied artistically in that ensemble. And if you have to change too much of your personality to give up too much of your viewpoint and what you feel about playing, about this repertoire, to fit into an orchestra, maybe in the long run, that's not going to work. So a friend of mine has an analogy that I think is quite fitting, and it's that, imagine you're at a farmer's market and you're selling, let's say you're selling apples. You have these wonderful, crisp apples right from the orchard. They're really the best you can offer, and they're just beautiful. And you're selling apples, and a customer comes by. They look at the apples, but they don't feel like apples that day. They want to buy pears. So what are you going to do? It's not your fault. You had the best apples there, but the customer, they weren't interested in that. They wanted to buy something else. And sometimes that's the case in auditions. I mean, you can really, sometimes the best player wins an audition, but very, very often it's not so clear. And that's the job of a committee is to make those hard decisions. And often in auditions, it's not black and white. I mean, there's the rare audition where somebody comes in and from start to finish is clearly the best for that position, the best player, the best musician, the clear winner of the audition. But most of the time, there are compromises that are made along the way. And I definitely feel that sitting in committees, that sometimes it's very clear, and that's what I want it to be. I want to be able to say, candidate number 14 from beginning to end was my choice. Occasionally that happens, but usually along the way, I'm, as a committee member, making tough choices about what do I value, which aspects of these candidates playing do I really value, and do I want to hear these people again in the next round until we finally make a decision. So that gets into the aspect that's really out of your control. And you want to be able to feel good about how you present yourself, how you present those apples, even if in the end of the day they choose to buy Paris for the result.